All right, we have a quorum, correct?
We do, you're good.
Okay, thank you. Like meeting in the village board to order at 8:17 p.m. I apologize to anyone who was waiting for this meeting to start. We were in committee of the whole and I decided to let it run long to hear all the public comment. So the first thing on our agenda is public notice. Has this meeting been noticed?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
Thank you. And let's take a roll call.
Yep. Trustee Arndorfer.
Here.
Trustee Backhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Ursink.
Here.
Trustee Stokebrand. I see her on. She might just not be back to her computer yet. Trustee Warren.
Here.
And Trustee Baldock is excused and President McKeag is here.
I'm here.
Oh, great. And I realized I did the statement out of turn there, but it has been publicly noticed. We go to special order of business. Consider resolution 2021-21 awarding the sale of $2,585,000 in general obligation water project bonds series 2021A. Director Emanuelson.
Good evening. Earlier today, the village, in conjunction with Baker Tilly, had their bond sale for this issue. Staff is pleased with the results. We had 3 bids representing about 20 banks for our bonds. The low bid was Robert W. Baird at 1.565%. Staff will recommend that the board approve that. I can read the formal recommended resolution at any time or recommended motion if you have no other questions.
President McCullough. Okay.
Yes, Trustee Backhorst,
I'd like to make a motion.
please.
I'd like to consider resolution 2021-21 awarding the sale of $2,585,000 general obligation water project bond series 2021A.
Robert W. Baird.
Whoops, you're right.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none. I don't see any hands raised. Are there any members of the public who would like to be heard on this matter?
No hands raised. I think you're good.
Okay, this will be a roll call vote.
Yes. Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Backhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
President McKeag.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So
So moved. Second.
Okay, Trustee Warren, seconded by Trustee Backhorst. Any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, yes,
Could we pull a couple of items?
yes, pull away.
Item G is in Gary and item I is in Idaho.
G and I. Okay. Any other items you'd like to remove, other trustees?
let's do C as well.
Okay. All right. With that, let's take a vote on the consent motion to approve the consent agenda minus withstanding C, I, and G, was it?
So moved.
G and I.
Correct, C, G, and I.
Second.
So trustee Bachhorst, seconded by trustee Ursink. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to items removed from the consent agenda, item C.
Yeah, thank you, President McKay. I just want to be the sole dissent on the sales of tobacco in Shorewood. So I'd like to either abstain or vote no on this particular item.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Mhm.
I am wondering if we have any police reports or anything associated with this application that would give us pause and help us make a informed vote.
I would include it in the memo. So it's basically a new owner. We did the background check on them. They're taking over for a current location that already has a tobacco license at this time. So it would just be licensing the new owner.
Are they here this evening? Answer questions from trustees?
I do not believe they are.
Okay, and I ask this because, this is our one time, especially with a new ownership, to make some considerable demands, and perhaps, going forward, that might help trustee Ursink and others or not. I mean, I'm inclined to vote no, just given that, we have had robust discussions regarding Jewel and other kind of things in this village and the proximity to other locations. I don't want to be the arbiter of what people do, even though the word morals is in or zoning code stuff. But anyway, I think that I will probably abstain from this vote as well.
Can I jump in here?
Yes.
I mean, to be clear, I'm not pro tobacco sales either. I've never smoked, and I'm not a proponent of tobacco, but I have trouble crossing the bridge of just pulling someone's tobacco license because we don't like the product, given that it's an existing license. It seems a little bit like a taking to me. I would assume they bought this business with the expectation that the current licenses would carry through. I would also think we'd be opening up to some sort of applying an arbitrary standard where we've approved these in the past and then we just choose one to not approve. So, obviously I'm not a proponent of tobacco, but in my view, it's kind of either one or all. We can't just kind of segment out ones that we don't want to approve. And maybe
President McKay?
Trustee Bachhorst, and then I'd like to wrap up unless.
Well,
there's
I agree with not being arbitrary. And I think we've talked, or at least I've brought this up in the past, of having applicants when this is a change of agent, if that's, so if we were to defer this, let me just ask, if we were to defer this item this evening, Sarah, what would how would that impact the
I think
status
they'd
of
be
their
real
license?
happy. So that they already waited over a month. So they applied in June and they missed the July deadline to open. I will say you guys just approved the license renewal for this exact location a month ago. So that's why they're not here, because nothing has changed but ownership. So this location has been selling tobacco for quite some time. And it's really just a change in ownership.
Are there any other trustees that would like to be heard on this matter? If not, we need a motion. So
I'll move to approve the tobacco products retail license for Lakeshore Petrol Pump LLC, 2521 East Capitol Drive, Shorewood 53211.
I'll second.
okay, motion by trustee Warren, seconded by trustee Stokbrand. Any discussion?
Well, I will say this, once we approve this, it's like I believe it's like they have property rights, so it's a lot more difficult to ever rescind. So going forward, I would just say that, and I know that this was, as Sarah mentioned, something that came up before, but we're all learning and, we're all part-time here, but so I will abstain.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Let's do a roll call vote.
Trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Bachhorst,
Abstain.
trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
Trustee Ursink,
Abstain.
President McKeag.
Aye.
If 4 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 abstain.
Okay, thank you. Item G, consider Lake Bluff Streetlight Control Cabinet. Trustee Stokbrand?
Yes, thank you. My question was, so the project management and communication plan, is it the Excel document on the next page? Is that it? Or are we missing something intrinsic here that needs to explain? There's something about identifying, people in the community that need to know about this. And all I saw was, I wondered if we were missing something. I just see something that says August 2nd.
Trustee Stokbrand, I don't believe that the file was uploaded with the final product. So if you'd like to withdraw it or defer table this item until the next meeting.
Would that
So
put a
I'm
hurt
sorry.
on the project?
Can I chime in 1 second? I did talk to Director Butchlick, and she actually didn't have some of the dates, so this was just the start of it, was my understanding
Okay.
at the time of the packet. So some of the dates were not completely confirmed, and she didn't want to include them.
So would this delay the project if we deferred this? Because I'm just wondering, it talks about business outreach, identify what community and businesses were notified, and is that supposed to be outlined here? It's just a utility box, so maybe it's not a big deal, but it just didn't seem complete for me to vote on.
I don't have any more information than Sarah's provided at this time.
So I guess I make a motion to defer if,
Is there a second? Okay, motion fails due to lack of second. Or I can second it. I'll second it. So any discussion?
President
Yes.
McKeag?
Mhm.
I want to ask staff, I want to ask Rebecca if you're comfortable with this as is. I understand that it's not complete. I'm happy that she has a communication plan. And as Trustee Stokebrand said, it is for a cabinet replacement project. So I'm comfortable in allowing the project to go forward. And I don't want the perfect be the enemy of the good, or, the good be the enemy of the good enough, which I think that this is. So I'm going to vote no on the motion on the table.
Yes, quick.
Trustee Warren?
Just in terms of the deferral, if we defer it until the September meeting, does that significantly impact any kind of capabilities, functionality, procedure, process? Now, I would ideally like to see a complete file before we vote on it, just as I would feel more comfortable with that, but I also am sensitive to timing concerns.
I am not aware of what the date the contractor is installing the light box. At the time that the packet was let, it was my understanding that there was going to be a plan put in. It's not complete, which is what you see within the scope of the packet. And it's my understanding that Clerk Bruckman had spoken with the director regarding that, and that dates were not available. So our intent would be to proceed forward by continuing the communication with the contractor. Typically, it's their data scheduling that we're waiting on in order to finalize some of those opportunities. So we'll look forward to getting that information and then plugging in the communication methods based upon the installation date and timing.
Mhm. Thank you. All right, any further discussion, or are you ready to take a vote on the deferral?
I guess my point, President McKeag.
Yes.
My point is, are we assured that the businesses that need to be aware of this, or even residents, will be aware? And so that's my concern. There's no plan. It's a date in an Excel chart, so.
And President McKeag?
Yes.
Our streetlights have been out probably the last couple of days. I know that's not the same as this, but I wouldn't want that for anyone else.
Yeah.
jog at night. And again, I think that we have a quality staff here. There's never, we talked about this planning commission the other night. There's never, information comes in. This is what's available. We're talking about the communication plan. So we could always predicate the motion on a communication plan that addresses the needs that Trustee Stokebrand had, which is notifying the area businesses and residents, which is part of our policy, by the way. So this isn't like they can do something that we don't already have. So I don't want to get in the slippery slope of deferring things because things aren't perfect. If staff brings this to us and it's, again, in the works, we want to make our September meeting longer over this one item, that's all on you.
Yeah, Trustee Ursink, and then I'm going to ask for a vote.
Thank you. I'm just kind of reading in the history here that implementation of an LED light system will impact the design and function of these cabinets. And I think I remember Director Bushlick saying that we weren't going to go the LED route. Does anybody remember that conversation? Because I'd still obviously be in favor of transitioning to LED lights. Is that not the case with this particular box and the future of our street lights here in Shorewood? And how does this new box impact that future? Does anybody, Rebecca, are you aware?
My understanding is that the light box to be replaced would be replaced, and then at a future point in time that we've spec'd out in the LRP plan, the long range financial plan, that we'd be further evaluating the transition to LED lighting. It was the decision at the board this year that we're going to put that transition off given the current workload that's currently present in public works and the deployment of the southeast sewer improvement plan.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, does this cabinet dictate if we can do LED or not? Is that something that we remember from past conversations?
I don't have an affirmative answer for that at this time.
Thank you.
If there's no other discussion, why don't we take a vote on the motion to defer and then see where we land?
This would be to defer. Trustee Bachhorst,
No.
Trustee Arndorfer,
No.
Trustee Stokebrand,
Yes.
Trustee Ursink,
No.
Trustee Warren,
No,
President McKay.
No.
Motion fails 5-1.
Would somebody like to make a motion and perhaps modify it with the intent to develop the details that are that we seek?
I can
Trustee
take a stab.
Mhm.
Thank you. I'm not sure how to do this, so I'm going to say I move to consider street light control cabinet replacement project management and communication plan. And I'm just going to fill in what I think we want here. One is, well, Arthur, you might have to help me amend this, but we want to ensure that the requisite communication plan is present prior to beginning of work, and then that this doesn't prohibit us from an LED installation at a future date. I don't know why it would prohibit. That probably just would cost more, but we don't have that material in front of us. That was a very messy motion. Forgive me.
Yeah, could we, Attorney Bayer or Clerk Bruckman, can you just double check that motion?
Can we, what is the essence of what you want to add to the to the motion?
I don't want to approve a communication plan that doesn't exist. And the second part is I don't want, since we've been discussing LED replacement at the village level since I've been on the board in 2013, that we wouldn't want to spend money unnecessarily, of course, and that would preclude us from going in the direction that's more sustainable and what have you.
Well, the
right,
agenda,
Arthur?
yeah, I mean, the agenda item that's up for this evening is just relating to a communication plan. There's nothing noticed or agendized relating to killing.
Then I'll take the second part out and just put in the communication plan. How about that? Clean it up. So thank you. Sorry for the interruption, but I don't want to approve a plan, so there better be a plan in there that Leanne Bushlick approves of or what have you.
And perhaps it could be forwarded to the village board as it's available. Would you take that friendly amendment?
What would you guys, okay, sorry.
Sooner than later. I mean, I would assume that that Leanne has been working on, Director Bushlick has been working on a plan. And, you know, now that I read this and I think about it, we're approving a plan and a communication, a management, project management and communication plan that we don't even, that's not even here. You know, so, you know, I'm not quite sure how much this impacts this project, you know, but I mean, we're trying to vote on something that doesn't exist. So I don't know. I'm a bit, you know, I guess I go back. I'm a bit leery of voting something that we're not looking at. But I think in the long run, I think that it's, you know, we got to get the project moving. I think it's important. Our streetlights are out as well, you know, routinely. So I think it's really important that we get streetlights out on Shorewood, and I don't want to impact that timing because there's not a communication plan out there. It doesn't, that's irrelevant to me. We need lights on in the streets, period. And I think that's the most important thing we're talking about here. So I'm gonna say yes, and it's a shame because I'd like to see this.
Would you like to second the motion? We need a second.
Second, I don't even know what the motion is. Do we figure out the motion? Is the motion?
Motion is to approve a communication plan to move forward with a communication plan for the project.
Second.
Okay.
Reluctantly.
Any discussion? With that, let's take a roll call vote.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Oh, could you read back the motion, please?
Sure. So it'd be to approve the Lake Bluff Streetlight Control Cabinet Replacement Project Management and Communication Plan, and to see the communication plan prior to work starting, the finished communication plan prior to work starting.
Good enough for government. Just kidding.
Okay, roll call.
All right. Trustee Stokebrand.
No.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Yes.
President McKeag.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-1.
5I, Trustee Stokebrand.
Thank you, President McKeag. I just want to do a little bit of cleanup here, I think, on consider park and beach permit and short-term cabaret license for Friends of Atwater Beach, FAB, for Surf Atwater for Saturday, August 28, 2021. I am a member of FAB, and we want to make it clear that this is no longer called Surf Atwater. We do insurance and leadership changes with the event, and so it is now the FAB Beach Bash 2021. And I think it just sort of highlighted, we have a new form for the park and beach permit, and we definitely want to be able to add, describe under, I think about halfway down the page, describe program activity. We want to include the name there. We have it on the cabaret form, and so it's just a little tinkering we need to do. That's just an aside. So I would like to make a motion if you're ready.
Yes.
I'm scrolling, I'm sorry. I move to approve the park and beach permit and short-term cabaret license for the Friends of Atwater Beach for Beach Bash for Saturday, August 28, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Trustee Stokebrand, seconded by Trustee Arndorfer. Is there any discussion?
President McKeag?
Yes.
I just had a couple of questions. So what are the changes then, and how will these changes impact the event?
President McKeag, may I?
Yes.
I do believe Libra is on the call, but I know that she's not at home, so I'll take the liberty.
I am here if you.
Oh, okay. I will let Libra then. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the biggest change is that we're not having any actual water activity for insurance purposes. So it's all beach focused. So that's the biggest, I think that's the biggest change. So everything else will be sandcastle building and, uplands. So,
Thank you.
Possibility for ukulele lessons.
yeah, yep.
Other questions or discussion? Trustee Ursink?
Yeah, could you guys talk a little bit about your cleanup plan for the beach after this event?
Yeah, we have it ending at 2 o'clock, so there's ample time for us to pick up. And I think we'll be on site until about 3:30. So we've kind of built in. And we were also part of organizing all year last year. We haven't done any this year, but we did a bunch of beach cleanups for 2020. So we'll be responsible for picking up.
Fantastic.
We
You
don't
guys
have
do. I
any-
know you guys do a great job, but I have to ask just to
Yep.
keep it clean down there. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep, there won't be, we don't have any vendors or food that we're advocating for this one. And yeah, it's,
Do you need more volunteers for pre-party beach cleanup? Is that something that could be helpful to send
yeah,
out a
we would
communication?
take that, sure.
I have a bunch of pickers and pails, so if you need if you need me to deploy the pickers,
Okay.
just let me know and we can get things down there. So if you, Libra, if you want to send me an email, and then I can help organize, like, whatever on Facebook,
Okay,
through Keep Shorewood Green, that'd be great.
okay, that sounds great, thank you.
I have some pickers as well.
Thanks.
As do I.
All right, any other discussion? If not, we can take a vote. Could we do a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Ward,
And me?
yeah, trustee Warren,
I got it. Aye.
thank you. Trustee Bachhorst,
Yes.
trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Ursink,
All right.
President McKay.
Yes,
Motion passes 6-0.
thank you. So that concludes everything removed from the consent agenda. Next is item 7, public hearings. There are none this evening. Item 8, citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on the agenda. Discussion may follow comment on non-agenda items, or discussion and action may come at future meetings. Is there anyone who would like to be heard this evening on a non-agenda item?
I don't see any hands and no one pre-registered, so I think we're okay to move on.
Okay, thank you. Item 9, new business. 9A, consider resolution 2021-20, establishing the method of public fire protection charges for the Shorewood Municipal Water Utility. Oh, this is Director Emanuelson.
I'd be happy to review this. At the previous meeting, June 21, the board directed staff to proceed with Public Service Commission to change the method by which public fire fees are collected with the water utility. The formal mechanism for doing that, amongst other paperwork, is to have the board adopt this resolution, which specifies that they want to proceed with that change, and then it's a formal action of the board. So with that, I seek your approval on this resolution.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution 2021-20, establishing the method of public fire protection charges for the Shorewood Municipal Water Utility.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by trustee Warren, seconded by trustee Ursink. Is there any discussion?
I think we probably went over this. Sorry, I should wait to be recognized.
Trustee Warren.
I think we probably went over this when we discussed this about 2 months ago, but what is the communication plan? I'd hate to see this pop up as a surprise. And I imagine that we have one and it's well detailed, but I didn't see it in the packet. And I was wondering if you could give me a thumbnail sketch of it.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing we need to do is to determine what the formal rates will be from the Public Service Commission. Staff is committed to reaching out to Those tax exempt parcels that would not previously have been subject to these water fees. We'll also have communications in the manager's memo. We have a Shorewood Today article planned. We have inserts for the utility bills, both in February, which is really the first time that this week coming to appear on the utility bills. So we do plan to have multiple and rigorous discussion points to help explain the process here. And on a related note, we also have the sewer utility fee increase coming, so we're going to leverage those communication methods to again explain the need for the sewer fee increases and the work that we're doing in the southeast section of the village.
Thank you. Any other comments? If
Trustee
not,
McCaig?
yes, trustee Stokebrand.
So there'll be another quarterly bill that comes out before the February one, where the fee is first on the bill. Is that correct? Could we have an insert with that bill, even if we don't know the exact amount, just that it's coming? So you get a notice in the mail with your water bill before you see it on your water bill?
Sure.
I think that'd be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other discussion. Are there any members of the public that would like to be heard on this matter? Okay, seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Bachhorst,
Yes.
trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
trustee Warren,
Aye.
President McKeag.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. 9B, update on Q2 financial report, Director Emanuelson.
Yeah, the materials in your packet represent the second quarter financial status as of the time that the report was prepared. This time of year is still pretty short on analysis because it's really only halfway through the year. We do have two items to mention in the cover letter, and that is the decline in court citations and court fines. That is a noticeable trend. Those are declining. And then on the other side of that, the on-street permit sales are actually trending higher than staff had initially projected about this time last year. So that's a positive. We do have a variety of notes throughout the financial statements to assist in evaluation of that, and the proposed budget for 2022 will be coming out at the September 8th meeting, and that budget will include projections for 2021. So with the timing of that, we try to focus our effort on the projections until the budget report comes out, and not so much on the second quarter report. So I'm happy to address any specific questions anybody has, either now or at any point in time at my office.
If there are specific questions, we could take those now. Otherwise, we could take a motion and then have discussion. Trustee Warren.
So Mark, what you're telling us, just a bottom line it for us is we're more or less on target. You know, there's something that's up, there's something that's down, but you know, take it all together, we don't see any huge variations from what we projected midway through the year.
That's correct.
Okay.
I think, is there a motion, or would anyone like to make a motion?
This was an update only.
Oh, okay. Then the one comment I was going to make is that the decline in court fines, that may be desirable because we don't want over enforcing going on, as it does lead to racial disparities or can be a reflection of racial disparities. So in terms of, since that might be an ongoing trend, if it's a change in procedure, we may want to set aside time at a future committee of the whole to talk about this and maybe invite the municipal judge. I'm not really sure, but I just wanted to register that idea and then we can pursue it down the road. Basically, I don't think we want to be trying to balance our budget, based on fines and fees.
If I might interject, I mean, I completely agree. Staff is always looking at trends.
Mhm.
Policy issues can impact trends, and I'll analyze that. But I'm always going to project based on trends on the best information we have when developing, in this case, the 2022 budget.
Yes. So it may be something that comes up at public safety because we do have that discussion point around what do we want enforcement to be with traffic violations or traffic stops. So I'm just registering that as a possible item for discussion at a future meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Director Anderson.
Great. Have a good evening.
Okay, you too. 9C, consider next steps for parking improvements. This is Manager Ewald.
I included within your packet is a previous history of some of the board's actions that we've undergone and taken in our last year in 2020 together to make different changes to, in particular, overnight parking permissions. And as we've concluded our first 6 months of implementation, we had agreed with the board to come back and do an overview of those items that were implemented and come back with some comments and information to share so that we could continue to make progress in tweaking parking in the village. So included within your packet are some highlighted discussion points and the main things that came up with the feedback and comments that were submitted over the last 6 months. The first is with regard to on-street overnight parking permit. This park permit has provided a simplified approach to providing overnight parking. It was a recommendation from the transportation and parking analysis that was completed at the beginning of 2020. Staff at this time recommends increasing the time of enforcement from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. to 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. in order to have additional time for consistent enforcement throughout the village. And if this was done, it would require us to update section 516A3.
All right.
Any questions on that? If not, I'll keep moving forward and I'll pause in between each item if there are any particular questions. The second was with regard to alternate side parking. This regulation received the most complaints and caused more frustration for customers than any other parking modification change this past year. Alternate side parking requirements only impact streets that have sufficient seasonal width to accommodate parking on both sides of the street, which is less than a quarter of village roadways. Staff is recommending that alternate side parking regulations be modified to apply only to East Capitol Drive, east of North Oakland Avenue, and North Oakland Avenue year-round, 7 days a week, including holidays. On these roadways, alternate side parking has proven beneficial for public works and police operations. On Sundays and holidays, police officers would be responsible for conducting parking enforcement on these limited roadways from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. as our CSOs are not scheduled on those days. Should the village board agree to proceed with this modification, an ordinance amendment be prepared to update 516C of the village code, including a fiscal impact statement relating to signage on East Capitol Drive and North Oakland Avenue. If you'll recall, funds in the amount of $50,000 were budgeted for in 2021 and available to purchase new signage. And staff would also prepare an implementation and communication plan for this change. Moving on, winter parking regulations. Winter parking regulations are currently in effect on various village streets from December 1st to March 1st. After review, staff is recommending to keep the existing time frame. In order to verify the need for currently posted regulations, the Department of Public Works would inventory the streets with existing winter parking regulations to confirm the necessity. However, Public Works does not expect the vast majority of the streets will have any changes. There may be a few outliers that they'll review on an individual basis, such as where particular blocks of residential streets may be in excess of 34 feet in width. Unnecessary winter parking regulations will be requested to be removed via an ordinance amendments and updates of Code Section 500-26. And then for reference, it's pretty routine that it happens every year. People talk about when the majority of snow falls in the state of Wisconsin. So we did actually go back and take a look at that 10-year history pattern and review, and those the times of winter parking would be consistent with your heaviest snowfall months in the state of Wisconsin. Moving on then to daytime parking regulations. The transportation and parking analysis recommend that the village streamline all daytime regulations and corresponding parking signage with consistent parking timeframe requirements for both 2-hour and 15-minute zones. No complaints have been submitted with respect to this item, and it doesn't impact enforcement. The position responsible for signage within the Department of Public Works has been vacated since May of 2021, and the department has been short 3 crew members to accomplish this task. The Planning and Development Director has agreed to review the existing sign inventory that was provided by Public Works and estimate the number of signs this change would involve, with the goal of ordering the replacement signs with money that's been allocated with this year's budget for implementation of the study. Implementation would require an update to various code sections, and then installation of the signage would take place at a future date when resources were available. Moving on, there are then 2 items that were recommended for referral to the TAG, or Transportation Work Group in the community, or the Community and Business Relations Committee. One was a request from some residents not to move vehicles for 24 hours. Parking limits and regulations within the village code require that vehicles parked on the street move at least every 24 hours. It's a routine requirement in communities to ensure vehicles are moved for snow and leaf removal, deter abandoned vehicles and individuals living in or occupying parking spaces that are available to the public. We did a survey and review of our other North Shore communities who also have these restrictions, or don't prohibit, or in general prohibit parking on the street. 2 complaints came in during the transition of parking requirements. One were from disabled parkers who were ticketed when their vehicle was not moved every day for alternate side parking. The village received requests to not move their vehicle daily. And a second was from a resident requesting on-street vacation parking that would allow him to leave his vehicle on the street for an extended period of time in the same location. Alternate side parking requirements are proposed to be eliminated, with the exception of North Oakland Avenue and East Capitol Drive east of Oakland Avenue. However, the requirement to move vehicles every 24 hours would remain. After reviewing these 2 requests, customer service advised that the village has put vacation permits into practice decades ago as an option for those residents who are unable to move their vehicle on a short-term basis. And so residents have been using vacation permits for the last several years. Vacation parking is $5 and up to a 2-week period. Vacation parking is only available to customers with a current monthly permit. There is currently no limit to the number of times a person can purchase vacation parking. And there's the possibility that vacation parkers can displace a monthly paid parker if the current vacation parking lot, which is River Park Lot C, is full. Vacation permits issued must park in Lot C of River Park. Over the last few years, on average, 24 vacation permits have been issued for Lot C. The customer is requested to leave their keys with an individual that may be contacted if the vehicle must be moved during the winter time for purposes of snow storage. The same permits could be provided to disabled parkers on a short-term basis. Should this practice continue, staff recommends including the parameters within an updated policy 39, which speaks to our parking procedures and parameters. Long-term ADA requests could submit for an ADA stall through the recently adopted ordinance 3019, which repealed the authority to designate parking stalls for handicapped parking and amended 524 to be loading and accessible parking zones. This is a proactive change that the board had made previous this year and requires an annual review of a permit provided. However, does not eliminate the requirement that a vehicle moved every 24 hours, which has been recommended to continue. This item is one that has been recommended for additional review by the TAG or the Community and Business Relations Committee. There is also a second item that has been recommended for one of those two committees to review, which has been private business designation of on-street parking. During this time when we've been under a public emergency declaration for COVID that's still in effect, private businesses have been allowed to request on-street parking to be designated as carryout zone for customer pickups. The public emergency declaration is in effect and will be requested to be rescinded upon conclusion of updating our audio-visual equipment for Village Board, Plan Commission, and CDA meetings later this fall, or if any other changes occur with COVID, which we all know is a possibility. Businesses are now requesting that on-street parking stalls in front of their business be permanently marked for the business's use for customer pickups. The parking and transportation analysis had recommended streamlining, simplifying, and being consistent in all areas of parking. Individually designated stalls allocated to specific businesses within an on-street public space is contrary to this approach. However, in the future, the village may desire to further review this topic as part of a curbside management strategy, in addition to the allocation of on-street ADA stalls in all business district areas. This is one that is also being recommended for a referral to the TAG or Community and Business Relations Committee at the board's pleasure for further review and policy discussion. I have been talking a lot. Wanted to make sure that we had everyone aware of some of the things that we've been working on. I'm available to answer questions. We also have other staff which are on the call who can also or are also available for questions. At the back end of those memo, we have possible motions that hit each highlighted point that the board can utilize as they walk through any of their questions and discussion on this item.
Okay, and just to clarify procedurally, we would take each of these motions separately?
You can, it's written to be moved in one motion. However, it's up to the board in your discretion.
Okay. So I see Trustee Bachhorst, Trustee Warren to start with.
I'll let Trustee Warren go if you don't mind, because I want to formulate my thought on this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to, I think I have my thoughts together. Rebecca, first of all, thank you and thanks staff for all the thoughtful work on this. Really appreciate a comprehensive 6-month review. And it, you know, we made it a point to get these in place very quickly, which was great. But it's also great that we're coming back and trying to improve upon the model that we have. So I commend you guys for getting it together quickly. I guess my question would be, and these might be two things that you say, we'll discuss those later, but we mentioned two things. Well, we mentioned one thing and the other thing occurred to me as I was reading the packet. First thing was we talked about lowering the fees on parking. So I'm wondering when we'll have that discussion. And kind of similarly, and maybe this is kind of wrapped into E, when I read about vacation parking, I thought to myself, you know, I think we're charging a $5 fee. My thought was, well, do we really need to do that? Can we just, do we really have to charge a $5 fee? And also, could we possibly let vacation parkers just park, on the street for the duration of their vacation, as opposed to moving to a lot in River Park. But I imagine that because it's a referral, the Community and Business Relations Committee could take up both those things and make a recommendation back to the board. So maybe that's something that doesn't need to be put in the motion tonight. But coming back, if that's correct, I guess my only remaining question would be, when are we going to look at the fees? Because ideally, I think I would certainly be on board with lowering those. I think there's a strong kind of, I think there's a strong urge to make it more affordable in line with our neighboring communities. But it's not agendized for tonight, so I don't want to charge down that path when it hasn't been agendized for full discussion. So just wondering when that's going to come back. So I'll stop talking now and let you respond.
Well, we would need to bring parking fees back for purposes of budget. It had not, if the board has a desire to delve into parking fees, that's something that we can prep and prepare. I would want advisement as to whether you would want it reviewed by either the TAG or Community and Business Relations in advance. Because of our timing and coming back in September, and September is our time to work on budget, I'd suggest that it be something that we cover during our review of the parking utility, which I believe is coming up in the second or third meeting.
Yeah, I would be on board. I mean, that's super close. So
okay,
we're naturally going to have that discussion in 4 weeks. So
yep.
So other questions before making a motion?
I have one.
Yes.
Okay, and Wesley, thank you for bringing that up, because I know that we talk about equity all the time, and equity is goes across many boundaries. We also talk about how onerous it is, for people in the lower income bracket to afford some of the things. So I'm grateful that we're looking, or that Trustee Warren had mentioned that we should look at our parking fees and stuff to be more in line with other municipalities, to be more welcoming and open inclusion. I'm not pro parking, I'm not pro car, but at the end of the day, we shouldn't be penalizing those who can least afford it. And then secondly, it's not on here, but I've mentioned it several times, including at Plan Commission. And so one of the things that we do have in this village is the ability to purchase all day passes for, I believe it's $10 per annum, so $10 a year. But the caveat, which really bothers me, is that only if you live in a single family or duplex. So that precludes a lot of individuals in this municipality. Say what you will about why that originally was generated, but I don't think it makes sense. I would say either get rid of it for everyone, okay? Or we make it equitable so that everyone can participate, because it's exclusive at this time. You either have to be able to afford to live in a single family or a duplex. Generally, those two provide parking for you already, including daytime parking. So I'm not one of the mindsets that you should be able to request daytime parking so that you can keep your own car in front of your house during the day. I'm not saying that's why this exists, but what it does do is it does penalize those that don't have parking and already have to move their car or pay $40 a night. And
Trustee Backhorst, I don't think that that's part of the motion tonight.
I understand that, but
So it'd be an item.
it's a possible motion. Okay, right
I
here.
don't know that.
Well, I'd like to look at it. I mean, what we're doing is we're deciding what we're going to be looking at. So I don't know why we wouldn't look at that.
I don't disagree. I just want to be sure that we're staying on topic and for the purposes of time management, not to limit any discussion or good policy suggestions that might be taken up at a future meeting.
So just for clarification, a reason why that particular permit wasn't discussed within the 6-month review is because it's not something that was changed or that action took place to change in that particular area. So we went, just so the board knows where we came out with this information, we were focused on really responding to those complaints. But if there are other items that the board would like to look at in the future, we can definitely come back and discuss how to do that.
Would we need to agenda that as a future item? Or would it just go to the tag?
It is something that could go to the TAG or Community and Business Relations.
Okay. Thank you. Because I would like us to look to that. I support the idea of exploring that. Just want to make sure we don't get it lost.
Are we on item C, 9C still?
Yes.
So I'm just wondering how this is not considered next step for parking improvements. I'm sorry.
I don't want to, I just wanted to be clear about whether it can be wrapped up or what your intention was. Please continue with your question.
My question would be that's, okay, so consider next steps for parking improvements, but what I'm hearing is that's limited to items that were already changed. So not any additional improvements, just past improvements that this or another body made.
Trustee Bockhorst, if the board would like to have other items that they would like to have considered by the TAG or Community and Business Relations, you're welcome to discuss those and provide that direction tonight. I just wanted to be clear that we didn't go into other areas of review, only those complaints and feedback that we received on the changes that were made over the last 6 months. So that by all means, the transportation and parking study and implementation of different steps has not concluded. We're just in the first stage of making changes with the first round of things that advisement has been provided for. Thank you.
So it could easily be added to item letter E under possible motions, because that refers to what's being referred to the tag. Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I needed to know, is where it belonged. Okay, did you have another suggestion?
No.
Did Trustee Arndorfer and Trustee Stoker have their hands raised?
Thank you. Trustee Arndorfer?
I think Trustee Stokebrand had her hand up first.
Okay, very good. Kathy, Trustee Stokebrand.
I was thinking when we started this and went from 3 to 5 a.m., we were thinking about bar time, 2 o'clock. So is there an understanding that the police department or the CSO will start away from the bars and work towards the bars so that people can just stand aside? That might be a good idea. I would rather keep these fees for this 1 year for budget purposes, so we sort of have a baseline before we start looking at changes. And I would like to know, first of all, I thought when we did the permits per, I thought it was per housing unit. So my understanding was that everybody, like if you're in a 4-unit apartment building, every unit could get as many as 2 permits, but I could be wrong. And finally, my question, who is on the tag?
Let's start with the first one, which was the unit.
Like, well,
Sure,
so
sure. Well,
force from the outside and work towards, so if people are leaving the bars at 2 o'clock.
correct. The intention was to not focus in on that activity during that time of evening, but now that parking overnight can occur all over the village, we're recognizing that it just does take that additional time. So it'll allow enforcement to be in more residential and then in commercial areas at the same time to fulfill that. It's just a greater area to review. And it was actually one of the suggestions from the community service officers who are doing enforcement. The second was with regard to having 2 permits be available for an individual unit.
That was my recollection. So that would be like an apartment.
Correct. And that is my understanding. TC Director Griffintrog is here. You'd like to comment?
Yeah, that is correct. I think with reference to what Trustee Bockhorst was stating, that does not relate to daytime permits. The daytime permits are not offered on a per household basis to apartment people living in apartments. So if that's where the question is coming from, you are correct that overnight on-street permits have been offered at 2 per housing unit, but that is not the same for daytime parking permits.
Thank you.
Trustee Stokebrand, did you get your questions answered?
Yeah, except who's on the tag?
I can answer that one as well. So the chair of the Public Works is the chair of the Technical Advisory Group. So that's currently Trustee Ursink. Then there's also representation from the CDA, John Kraus, the Elder Service Advisory Board, Katie Now, the Shorewood School District, Tim Kenny, We have a current vacancy from the Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Committee since they've reestablished as a different name. Therese Klein from the Plan Commission. We have a current vacancy for a multifamily property owner with the retirement of Leonard Sobchak, but he had served through recent times. And then lastly, Jake Brissett from the Business Improvement District.
Okay.
And
good. Thank you. And I'm assuming, would someone from DPW be on that or no?
Yeah.
all department heads as staff are advisory to the group, but we're not actually on the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Yeah, I mean, just a basic background question. I mean, how many parking zone, I'm sorry, carryout zone spots are there and where are they concentrated primarily? I think I have a feel for the latter question, but just trying to get, a little more clarification on that.
At this point, I think we are perhaps down to 3. It was larger. It did include places like Sherwood and Williams prior to, at some point, Sherwood and Williams rescinded theirs. But at this point, we're down to Collectivo, Fiddleheads, and I believe Goody Gourmet also still has one out there. But at its peak, I think we had perhaps 7, including both Sherwood and Williams locations. And I believe at least one location on Capitol Drive, perhaps for Vito's Pizza or somewhere else. But there were 7, I believe, at one time.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Bachhorst, do you have another comment?
It's a comment, yes. I'd say that the representation of the tag that was outlined, to my understanding, not a single renter, and we are 54% rental in this village. I'm not saying that that impacts people's decision-making, but it does definitely impact their perspective and experience. So maybe that's an item for future consideration, but I'd love to see a little bit more diversity, especially when we're talking about parking that impacts, again, for example, predominantly the renter.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, I believe we did have representation from Leonard Sobchak, who was a property owner of multi-unit buildings.
Very different, Rebecca. Sorry, very different.
I just wanted to provide that for reference. Thank you.
Would anybody like to make a motion at this time?
Are we gonna try to do them all in once, or, because I can try it.
Go for it.
Ooh, okay. I think that we're all in agreement. I think we have to be clear, I think we have more issues to discuss here, clearly, but I think we're all in agreement on the recommended motions from staff. I think we have to do a deep dive on other stuff, but I'll try to make the recommended motions so we can kind of get our night moving on here. I move to maintain on-street overnight parking permits and update the enforcement time frame from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. B, discontinue alternate side parking on all village streets except for North Oakland Avenue and East Capitol Drive, east of North Oakland Avenue. Enforcement of alternate side parking on these 2 streets would be performed 7 days a week and holidays. C, maintain winter parking regulations, December 1st to March 1st. Perform a sign audit for all areas currently posted and eliminate signage where road does not necessitate the regulation. D, conduct a review of 2-hour and 15-minute parking signage for future implementation, purchase signage in 2021 and install based upon staff capacity. And E, refer the practice of vacation permits and private business requests for on-street public parking to the TAG or Community and Business Relations Committee for further review.
Could you add, Trustee Bachhorst wanted to add the review of the day permit policy to item E?
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Would anybody like to second?
Second.
Trustee Ursink seconded. Any further discussion? Are there any members of the public who would like to be heard on this matter? Okay, seeing none, we could take a roll call vote.
I think Trustee Stokebrand had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Trustee Stokebrand?
I would just like to ask staff then, so from your perspective, this seems to have been a pretty resounding success in terms of operations. I mean, it was complicated, but if Bart could just, I mean, it doesn't sound like you had a lot of complaints.
I mean, yeah, most complaints would not have come to my office. They would probably have been referred to customer service or the police department. But my understanding through our mutual meetings is that it has been pretty successful in terms of customer interaction. As Rebecca pointed out in the memo, the most complaints we received was with respect to understanding the alternate side regulations on the varied streets that we have here. So I think that was the one, large issue I think that was still out there. But I think by and large, it has been seen as a success by staff.
And is there anything that you see specifically, I mean, other than this food delivery pickup carryout spot that you could see COVID related? Is it just too soon to tell? If we ever come out of COVID, if there's any other changes besides this food carryout issue? Hard to say. I mean, I just wonder about if UWM goes back in person in the fall. I guess that's what I'll be curious to see, how it would affect, what's going on. That's why I would like to see everything stay the same for one full year, so we kind of have a real baseline. Thank you.
Those are great comments. And I also wanted to say, since I wasn't on the board when you passed this policy, I just want to say congratulations. I knew it took a lot to work through, and there were lots of revisions and amendments and considerations. And so I do think from that perspective, it's a great policy change, and getting a full year of baseline data is a really great way to go. All right, let's take a roll call vote.
All right. Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Yes.
President McKay.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Great. Moving on to item 10, reports of village officials. 10, the village president is first. The first
I
announcement.
think we're missing.
Sorry,
I think we're missing
President
you're missing one here. It's consider resolution 2021-19 amending fee schedule procedures regarding
yeah.
open records. You don't want to miss that one, President McKay.
A little too eager there. Thanks for
Want to
keeping
miss
me
that
honest.
one.
Hold me accountable. All right. So since Trustee Ursink introduced that so well, we'll go to Manager Ewald.
Thank you. I was scrambling for my mute to make sure we covered and had some more discussion about this item. The JP&L committee has been throughout the course of this last year, as you can recognize by the lengthy history, been having discussions and reviewing open records and our retention schedules and fees associated with those here at the village. There are 3 items at each meeting. I should preface this, we continue to make progress. So the last time we met, we developed a uniform notice for purposes of the village. And tonight we have 3 items that are requested and before you for some consideration and discussion. So we're looking forward to that. The first is resolution 2021-19 that has redline fees and language modifications that fall in line with time and materials that we are aware of at this time and price checking of digital storage devices. Prior in our discussions in JP&L, it was acknowledged that in the past, the village has not tracked time and expense relative to open records. When we brought back a memo earlier this year, I believe it was at that time that the village clerk had identified approximately 40 open record requests for 2020, and the police department identified 202. In large part, and we categorized the most frequently requested records for the JP&L committee and provided that at that time. So in part of pulling together fee information, we also took the time to go back and take a look at our lease agreements for copying and scanning. We identified that the cost for a black and white copy is similar to that of a color copy. And in our prior schedule, they were about 10 cents off from each other. So that was lower. in hindsight of that conversation. We also had discussion with the JP&L committee about the hourly rate that should be identified for charging on location costs. And that we had identified to be one of the lowest cost full-time people in the village who would be doing that work at Village Hall. And so you see that amount then updated and reflected within the scope of that schedule. So I think it's important to know that in some of the forms that are also proposed within your packet, what we would be doing moving forward is tracking and getting a more detailed accounting for how much open records is costing, how, what time is charged or not charged based upon state statutory requirement, so that we could gather more data and then go back and then have an opportunity to review on an annual basis. That being said, locating in your packet is a list of those fees, some of which we need to get some resolution and clarification on with the village board before we proceed. And one of those is, should the village charge for scanning in documents requested that are only currently available in a paper format? So there are some documents that we just only have in paper form, or if for purposes of going through redaction efforts, some things need to be printed and then redacted upon. And so this was a concept that we had previously endeavored to get some direction on, and we're kind of at the point where we need to receive some of that direction and discussion from the board. Creating a PDF, which is something I didn't realize at the time, it has the same time and expense as copying a paper document, except for the cost of the sheet of paper itself. Because when we run something through our copier for purposes of scanning, it is charged to us through that agreement like a copy. When a document is short and the time spent scanning and sending is minimal, charging someone for this service doesn't seem like a big deal. More challenging is when boxes of documents are requested, and to avoid paying for staff time and copy costs, the requests are asked for the documents to be scanned in and sent electronically. Scanning location time includes disassembly and reassembly of records, sorting through boxes looking for specific records, removing staples, finding the correct pages, and then reassembling all the documents at conclusion. Public records law does not require the village to create a new record by extracting and compiling information from existing records into a new format or record, such as scanning a document. Some communities we found, because we looked at policies from all over the US, some communities charge for scanning a document if the document were only in paper format. Some options included in here for tonight, but not necessarily all inclusive for your review, are three options, which would be charge for the cost of scanning a document similar to the photocopy, not charge for the cost of scanning the documents, or not charging for the cost of scanning and requiring staff to scan in all records requested, provided that they are not more than 20 pages or not feasible given the village's digital environment. So an example of the digital environment would be, sometimes we have homeowners who come in and make requests for prior plans that are on 24 by 36 sheets to be produced here. So we fulfill that request and then provide it to the requester. So we don't have equipment at this time that scans in that type of information. So they would pay for the outsourcing of that scanning project. It should be noted that previously the committee recommended that individuals be allowed to bring in their own scanner or copy to perform this task themselves if they had that available. And this already occurs if the requester complies with the requirements on the scanning and printing form that was attached within the scope of your packet. The last item, the third item for purposes of consideration this evening and discussion, is a record procedure that would be amended to mirror the policy direction from tonight's meeting with any of the related items above. And that follow approval of these items, it's understood that the document may be updated to provide additional clarification from time to time based upon staff's experience utilizing a document. Just prior to the meeting coming in tonight, I was scanning my email, there was, a helpful suggestion to include attorney time spent, when we're fulfilling different records to kind of have that balance cost. So just an example of process improvement. Once we create a form, we can always tweak it to be better reflective of the information that we need now that we're at this new step in the process. We can get back to the policy considerations, but I do want to update you that at the very beginning, staff went back and as a part of this process of looking at records, took a look at the record retention schedule that's located within the ordinance. And each department went through an extensive time period where they went through those records. Is that still an accurate description? Is that the office that's still holding that record? Do we have records that we have been holding that we should have disposed of? To really get a better inventory and gauge about what records were present in the village. In September, the board can anticipate reviewing an RFP for scanning meeting minutes and property files for the village. We'll also be providing a proposal to upgrade the village's Laserfish software and digital storage capacity to maintain those digital documents moving forward. And then in the meantime, we have also been going through the process of trying to gather an inventory of the records that are actually present and that we have. If we have a record and there is a request placed, we need to have an inventory of what we currently obtain so that we can produce the record or not produce that record based upon some type of record and log. And that just hasn't been available in a comprehensive approach for a long period of time. So at the onset, when we started that process, we were clear that it wasn't going to happen overnight, but that staff was going to make continued efforts and incremental steps in order to finally achieve that goal as we move forward. And at this time, I'll conclude and can help by answering any questions related to the topic.
Okay, so I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for all that and everybody who's given input over the couple of years that this has been going on, developing. So what's before us tonight is you did put some motions in the memo, right? So this is, we are asking to be considered at this.
And they're there for purposes of your guide, so that as you work through your discussion, you have those key points identified.
Okay. So I saw Trustee Ursink, Trustee Warren have their hands up. Trustee Ursink?
I really thank you so much, Rebecca. I know this has been a long process, and I'd love to see the conclusion get somewhere. I'm not quite sure we're exactly there right now, but I'd really like to continue the conversation about the scanning of documents and what the future looks like for that. I know you mentioned it a little bit, but will the village need to keep always a paper copy, or do you see the village transitioning to digital copies? And once we have those copies digitized, would that be something, if they're already digitized, would that be something that the public can have, for free? Would there be a cost associated with, if that would be a PDF? Is that something that can be emailed or put on a drive? Let's say a resident comes in with a drive. Can we put that on their drive? I know this is a lot, but I really gonna like the idea of getting to this next stage of scanning having all of our documents, the documents that can be scanned, that we have the equipment for, and even maybe considering investing in the future for equipment that we don't necessarily have right now, but I think that make the process so much easier and so less wasteful if we decided to scan our documents. And I'd love to know your opinion on that moving forward.
Well, trust that I'm not the only one with an opinion. So there are other staff on the call and they're always available to jump in because this is definitely a collaborative effort. But there are pros and cons to both of those approaches. One is that from a destruction schedule, we would have those, what we could scanned in, and then they would just be scheduled to be destroyed at their term. which, from what I'm aware of, different departments have had different timeframes for that. So that's something that we want to follow the state schedule and go through that destruction cycle. So it also takes time up front in order to create the scan. But in the procedure that's outlined to you, everything at the end point does come to the village clerk. And then she would be in the position to make sure that those documents were on the retention schedule for the time period required. And Clerk Brockman, I don't know if you want to provide any additional comments.
I think as we're looking toward digitizing, that, will be helpful. I think it affects each department a little differently. If things need to be printed and redacted, then they either need to be rescanned or recopied, a lot of times. Otherwise, we'd have to provide it in paper. So there's still a level that potentially has, we'd have to rescan in. And in the meantime, even if we move to digitizing all of our records, it doesn't happen in a month or 60 days. It happens over a long period of time. So what would we do in between that time? And I do know there's a slight level, I know you brought up Trustee Ursink, of somebody bringing in their own drive. There's a slight level of discomfort, with putting someone else's drive into your computer, that if it had a virus on, it does impact us then. Not that would happen all the time, but it's a potential that we look out for when you're discussing these situations. So hopefully that provides a little insight.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's the future, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of considerations that we have to take, that we have to think about, and we have to put that plan in motion. So I appreciate that. I hope that's something that we can still keep discussing, because I think that's, I'd like to see us move in that direction eventually, but it's a lot more workload, I think, up front, and a lot more thinking as far as infrastructure. So
I agree.
appreciate the thoughtfulness here.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be great, but it's going to take us some time to get there. So, and we want to make sure we do it right so it's consistent, and then we're able to provide as much transparency to the public as possible then when it's time.
Thank you. Trustee Arndorfer.
I think Trustee Warren was before me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Warren.
Thank you. First of all, Trustee Ursink, I love where your head is at. It happens to dovetail with the conversation I had in my other life. Digitization of documents, and especially these kind of historical documents, and your complete file as a village. I imagine that would be something that we need to discuss as a multi-year project in budget. I would just imagine that would be kind of a large initiative that it would be, for a lot of reasons, business continuity and open records and transparency. I think it'd be something that'd be great to get done and great to start thinking about as a board. So I just wanted to first commend you for that thought, because I think it's something that, that's the way of the future, and that's where we want to go. As I read the packet, kind of coming all the way back around, and thought about what made sense here for open records, to me, just kind of giving you where I'm at here, I think it makes sense to me, to when we're scanning in documents, I think there should be some sort of de minimis exception. And I think the packet was 20 pages, and I agree with that. If it's just 20 pages, just a quick scan for documents, I don't think that we need to charge for that. I just don't think that that's necessary to charge for. If we have to outsource it and outsource boxes and have a vendor scan it for us, then I see charging whatever the cost would be there. But when it's a smaller request, I would be supportive of not charging for it. Similarly, if somebody brings in their own scanner, I don't think we should charge for that either. As an attorney, I'll always be concerned that, with damage to original documents, but I think that's a risk that I'm comfortable taking. And if damage does happen, we can talk about it then, and we can kind of figure out what we're going to do going forward. But, if somebody brings in their own scanner, if somebody goes through all that effort, I don't think that we should be charging them to then, scan the documents into their scanner. So that's kind of where, just to give you a kind of a thumbnail sketch of where I'm at, that's what I'm thinking as I read through the packet here.
All right. If I can go.
Yeah.
All right. I just had a couple background questions and a couple others. On the background questions, if these have come up elsewhere and I just missed it in the materials, just let me know and I'll go back and look. But I mean, I guess first up, I just want to get a sense of, how many requests we get a year, and is there any estimate as to the amount of time it has taken to address these various requests? We refer to JPNL recommending looking at the hourly rate of the lowest cost individual typically providing the records. I mean, is it given the redacting and all that, all those actions that may be required? I don't think that's necessarily indicative of who is doing the actual work. And I guess in assembling this price schedule and the various guidelines, I mean, can you give any more background as to the benchmarks that you looked at, municipal, federal? I mean, what are some of the best practices you were looking at? And again, if any of these have been addressed elsewhere, just let me know and I'll check back.
I'd be happy to do a brief recap, and I'll ask Sarah to jump in at different points, because I'm not sure whether she has some information to share or not. But to let you know about the record and the lowest rate, it was the discussion of JPNL, the prior JPNL committee, that they wanted the lowest cost person in Village Hall, whether or not that was the person actually doing the review of the record or the file. So that was based upon that prior direction, which is how that was incorporated within the scope of this fee schedule. And that, of course, is a fee that is up to the pleasure of the board. But that was the background behind that. It was a conscious decision at that point in time that people wanted the lowest cost at that point. With regards to past record requests, as I noted before, we have not tracked our time and level of detail and expense relative to open records. So there are some things by statute that we are not allowed to charge for. One would be redaction. So the complexity of redaction will change based upon the request. And from what we could ascertain in 2020, Clerk Bruckman had estimated approximately 40 requests in 2020, and the police department had identified 202 based upon their system of tracking. Another reason why I think this is a really positive process is because we've had requests to change the way that we're doing things, and it's called us to really comprehensively overview how each department has been doing it for many years and called together that process to streamline it a bit. And then also to ensure that everyone's abiding by the same type of protocols. So Sarah, I don't know if you want to speak to the complexity of request.
Sure. I can't speak on behalf of like the police department, but I can speak on at least Village Hall. So your average request typically comes from planning and development, and it can be handled within 5 to 10 minutes. Doesn't take a whole lot. A lot of their stuff is digitized. And if not, it's easy to do. The complex requests come into when we have to start searching emails, particularly because we're still sitting on an old email server that's not supported. It does require a lot of IT time. So those tend to be our more complex requests. Besides like large election requests. So like with 2020, we're still getting requests for that kind of stuff. Those requests become a little more complex. Those can take anywhere from an hour of time to, I think, our last estimated IT poll for emails is like 30 hours or something. So they can get quite large. I think right now we're tracking, what we've had for 21 so far, and we're just about over 80 requests in just for the Village Hall. So we're about double where we were last year, sitting in July already, or in August.
All right, thank you. And just in the spirit of holding on to documents for too long, I did manage to dig up a FOIA request I submitted to a federal banking agency in 1994, where I got dinged 25 cents per copy for a total of north of $100. So this fee schedule looks much better than that. So thank you for all the work. Appreciate it.
Sounds like you have a long retention schedule.
Trustee Stokran?
Thank you. So I just wanted to confirm then, so the equipment that we have, whether you make a photocopy or a scan, the vendor that we rent our machines from, the village has to pay for that scan?
It creates an image.
I'm sorry?
So it creates an image, no differently than a copy. It's just that the copy comes out on a piece of paper and the image goes in as a scan.
And so is the cost the same?
They are, you allow me some time to dig for the memo. I have to just go back a couple of
I
them.
think it says the cost of scanning a document is similar to a photocopy.
Correct.
And so, and just to be clear, the policy we have about someone who brings in their own scanner, they're only allowed to scan a copy, not an original. Is that correct? I thought that, I'm trying to recall.
No, I don't recall a difference based upon that. Now, if something needs to be redacted, we will need to do that prior to providing them with a record. But
Okay. Maybe I didn't have a correct recollection about that, because I'm just trying to think of the cost that the village is incurring. So for redaction, we don't charge them for the redaction, but we charge them for the copy we have to make to redact.
correct.
Right?
It's state statute that we are not allowed to charge for redaction.
Okay.
Typically, that takes up a lot of the time or potentially location.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say that the shift to digitization, I think, can be helpful. And I'm trying to see how this could happen on a daily basis. If we just like start jumping in and depending on staff and equipment. But so let's say like all permits, like the FAB applied for the park and beach permit. Like, could you just go and look at a tab, and the minute, I don't know if she filled it out online. I think she did. That's already digitized, right? So couldn't you just put a tab for permits and anyone could go and look? You wouldn't need to do a FOIA. You could do campaign finance reports, the tobacco permit. You know what I'm saying? Is there a way to just start perfunctorily and then put a tab on the village website that says, here's click on this and find out who's applied for a permit. Click on this and find out, like under my trustee website, put campaign, for my profile. Under it could be a link where you just click on and find my latest campaign filing report. I think like DPW already does. Don't they have their filing reports for MMSD and the federal requirements for pollution control and everything? I think some of those are already on the DPW website.
I'm not sure this is like if you're posing a question, but one of the reasons why why we have suggested moving forward with the minutes and the property files is because we did a review of the most frequently requested records requested. And those were the top two that were coming. Number one, the age of the minutes they're very old. I mean, you go back to the 30s, so you don't necessarily want someone, to your point, handling them because of just the age of the document in general. But there's desire of the public to go back and query and have something that has an ability to be searchable. So I think as the village progresses, this isn't something that's going to be solved in one night or 1 month, but it's something that we need to progressively work towards so that we do, as those things come up. We've just been trying to take them in a priority order.
Sure. And so the property one is a property ownership or a tax document, or?
It's property records. So when someone's looking to purchase a home or make modifications to a home, just because of the sheer age of our homes, the people
like
who
when permits were pulled.
When permits were pulled or plans that were on file or what work was done. you know, if we have those documents, that can be really valuable for someone who's just purchased something and looking to remodel or expand in some way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands of trustees. Oh, trustee Bachhorst.
Thank you. The latest edition of the municipality has come out. Really, really good article, 4-page, 3-page actually, maybe 2.5, on public records requests. And a lot of what I can tell you as the past president of this organization, I've heard this discussion ad infinitum, and in particular, the strain that it often puts on small municipalities. So I would hesitate to make policy based on what the costs are currently or what the requests are currently. But I do appreciate the hard work that's gone into this. And a couple of things that I would change, but at the end of the day, we can always change this at a later date. It won't be written in stone. Is that I would look at instead of the lowest cost employee, I would rather go with an average, unless we can, unless we could say that we're guaranteed that the lowest the wage earning employee will be making these, and therefore extend the time of production. So there is always, you know, something that takes 5 or 10 minutes here and there still disrupts your day. We have a small staff, but at the same time, public records are incredibly important. This is something that, you know, that we want to ensure that the public has. If you do read this article, it starts on page 4. You know, there is a lot, especially when the public records law is abused, right? You know, of course, we want this to be a relatively cheap and easy opportunity for our residents and others to obtain public records. But there are a lot of, you know, malicious and other and predatory, quite frankly, data mining and things that do occur. And municipal governments are, you know, bastions for this. We've got IT that we outsource. Trustee Starkbrand had mentioned putting a tab on the website, which I think would be great. But every time we make a website update, it has to be outsourced. It takes a while to come back. You know, we could look at creating more positions, et cetera. I know we're not asking to revamp everything tonight, but I would say that, you know, I would recommend reading, again, the article that I mentioned, just to keep in mind that, you know, the intended outcome isn't necessarily always, you know, the intended result or the result that ensues. So if staff is happy with the fee schedule, I am fine. Like I said, I would change the cost to actual cost, not the lowest paid individual, unless we want to create a position for that, and then I would be comfortable with that, because I would rather do an average, because again, unless that person is guaranteed to always be performing these tasks, then I'm not sure why we would undersell ourselves, especially when we charge $40 a night for on-street parking and other things. So the other point that I have is I am in no way comfortable giving original documents of any nature out to anyone, whether it's in the public or private sector. This original, there's only one copy. So I understand, I'm an environmentalist. I hate to make unnecessary waste and extra copies on things, but and I'm not trying to say that anyone would have any malicious, you know, intent to destroy or walk away with the document, but that stuff happens. And then we do not have a copy until we do have a records management system or something else that scans this. We of course all have to keep in mind the budgetary implications, you know, of any of the improvements and making improvements piecemeal. Lastly, I would say that, and this could be for down the road, but in this article in here references it pretty well regarding that sometimes there are, how did they put it? And I'm not saying we have this in our municipality, but sometimes this one says requests from disgruntled citizens who make continue it. Well, I'll just give an example of one of the other municipalities in the league. There's one where they have someone working almost pretty much full time on producing records for one individual, because the state statutes and what we're able to govern do not restrict the amount of records any individual can request. I'm not sure if we can. I know it said you get the first 5 copies free. I forget what it is per month per individual. But anyway, but in light of all that, we can always change it again. It's always difficult to become quote unquote less transparent though going forward. So I wouldn't want to, this is one of the times that I'd be a little bit more judicious in relaxing the charges and doing a tapered approach versus like parking. I think overnight on street should be free, but that's another story. So anyway, that's all I have here.
Thank you. Manager Ewald?
Listening to Trustee Backward, it also sparked some, some thought, which is, one form that we have, we want to track what we are doing so that we have an ability to go back as a group and then also look at what we're doing and then adjust from there. So I appreciate scanning coming from someone who prefer to have documents digitally, right? So, if we chose to do it in a certain way, I just want the board, you're going to need to come back and see these fees every year anyways, because of the hourly rate that's associated in here. We also want to do look backs so that we can take a look at what we're actually seeing. That data usually that will help us drive more informed, educated discussion. So know tonight, know that as we make decisions go forward, we're going to be coming back to take a look at them and then review them and calibrate based upon the data that we are seeing.
Thank you. Trustee Stokebrand, did you have something to add?
I just wanted clarification on and I'm looking at the resolutions, the proposed resolutions in ITAL and then the resolution itself. Under the resolution itself, all departments' first 5 copies of personal information /month would be free. And so that's if I say I want to go get a copy of all the permits for the house I'm thinking about buying, right? Is that correct?
In most instances, it's when someone is requesting a copy of their tax bill or utility bill or something of that nature.
Okay, so they get 5 copies for free each month.
Correct. It's been, from my understanding, that has been used most with the instance of tax utility bills.
Okay, and then the question that we don't have answered that is up for discussion is below that scanning paper copies to electronic format. Is that where you have same as above and a question mark? The question mark is for the scanning paper copies to electronic.
Right. That was getting to the point of if we only have something in paper copy, we've had requests to put that in a digital format, or to scan it in. Do we want to do that? That's really the genesis of that question.
Okay. And so is that in the related to possible motion for consideration item B as in boy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Would any of the trustees like to make a motion at this time?
I think, if there's anybody from the public maybe that wants to speak on this, if you're open to that idea, I'm sure we have some folks that have an opinion here.
Yeah, typically I wait until there's a motion on the table, but if you would prefer to take public comment first.
And it looks like Attorney Bear has got his hand up and Trustee Stokebrand.
Okay.
I can take a stab at this. Are you ready, President McCaig?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should confer with Attorney Bear.
Okay, I'll hold off.
See
Thank
if
you.
he had some guidance.
I just had one very, very small comment on a very minor language you may want to tweak. It's on page 260 of the materials. It's under the operating procedures record request under sub C. And I'll read it and I'll explain. If the request includes a question, not a record request, the record custodian is advised to respond if they know the answer. And of course, that's a wonderful thing, customer service wise. There are individuals that work for the municipality every day that interact with residents, and they try to give them information that someone's asking for. And of course, we do that every day of the week, and and that's good customer service. I just want to be careful that we don't tie that into an open records request though, and make them one and the same, because they're not. And here's an example that I'll give, and I think Clerk Bruckman can probably back me up with some specific examples on this. Sometimes a member of a department will get something that says open records request on the top of it, but it's just a series of questions. It's not really requesting a record, and it's everything from tell me who was working on such and such a corner on such and such a day for the DPW. And if you have this policy and somebody does this, what would you do in response? And it's a list of 10 or 15 questions. And so you may want to tweak that just to say if a request includes a question, if reasonable, the custodian would confer and try to provide information in a reasonable manner. But again, I think Clerk Buckman will back me up on that sometimes we get, or staff gets something that says open records request, and then it's just actually just 15 or 20 questions about what do you do and why and who's in charge of this and who does that. And while we try to have good customer service, we don't want to equate an open records request for just questions about policy and staff and tie those two together.
This does happen, and it typically happens with elections. But we will respond to say, there is no such record, but an answer to the question would be
as follows.
So yeah, so that a lot of times happens with like election processes and stuff if we don't have a detailed outline, but we can tell them what the process is. So.
Mm-hmm. But there's no, so Attorney Baird, just to clarify, is what you're saying that submitting questions to the village is not covered by any policy as far as what the response has to be or in what format or anything like that, whereas an open records request does need to be responded to?
Well, an open records request is a very specific statutory duty, or responding to it is a very specific statutory duty. And we just don't want to equate somebody sending a laundry list of questions about, okay, how do you do X, Y, and Z related to your elections or this, that, or the other thing, as the clerk was just referring to. We don't want to equate that. So all you'd have to do is where it says if the request includes a question or questions, not a records request, the records custodian may respond if they know the answer and the requests are reasonable. That would be the only tiny tweak, as opposed to is advised to, because we just don't want to equate those two because they're different.
Okay. So if a trustee makes a motion, please include that amended language referencing, was it 2E? No,
C.
2C. Okay, Trustee Stokebrand, I think you wanted to try making a motion.
I'm sorry, could Attorney Baer, again on C, if a request includes a question, not a record request, the record custodian is, what was the preferred language?
May, let me just see here. May respond if they know the answer, comma, if reasonable, or if the request is reasonable.
And does it beg the question, what's reasonable?
Well, a 3-page handwritten or typed out, interrogatory of X, Y, Z, A through Z. I mean, that's probably going to be hours of staff time. If somebody is, sends in a request that it says open records request, but they just have a simple question about how the election works or something along those lines. Certainly, that's customer service, good customer service. We do that day in, day out. Staff does that but we do sometimes get, staff does sometimes get just a list of a laundry list of questions that are masquerading as an open records request. That's not really an open records request. And we just don't want to have it suggested here that we're essentially changing the policy by changing the law really by turning a set of interrogatories into an open records request that they're compelled to continually respond to if they're not reasonable.
And I did have one other final question then, with the scanning to electronic. Is this the sort of thing where we would do similar to the others? The first, so many are free, but by the time you get to the 4th page or the 21st page, or if it's more than 21 pages, then there would be a cost. Is that in part of, the charging for? So I guess I'm looking at page 256 of the package. If I wanted to go with option C for the scanning in my motion, is that referred to in item B under the possible motion of consideration?
I think the request for personal information was tied to that personal information regarding the individual requesting it. That's my understanding of the intent that was put behind that. So of that person. So I don't know how that would look in other environments. You could clarify it, so maybe it's, if you're looking at C, an option would be first 20 pages, or just increase it to 25 to include that, and note that it includes those 5 free. Is your intent to try to propose something with C? Is that?
Yeah, you got comfortable with C.
So
You want,
But the first motion says it just is to approve the fees, but we haven't outlined what the fees are yet, right? And we haven't, we need to vote on that first, don't we? The ones that are, I guess, because we have a question mark on the resolution, right? For scanning
Correct.
electronic format.
Correct. So perhaps looking at B first.
Okay, so I recommend approval of resolution 2021-19, amending fees for open records, but changing, sorry, am I scrolling here? Changing the, whoops, here we go. Now it's, I'm sorry, my mouse is, whoa. But changing the, making the scanning paper copies to electronic format reflect scanning. No charge for the cost of scanning and requiring staff to scan in all record requests provided unless they are more than 20 pages or not feasible given the village's digital equipment.
that sounds right. I'll second that.
Do you want to add item C?
I was just gonna, sure, and I'll also recommend approval of documents associated and attached reflecting the policy direction provided. Record request form, procedure for requests, and scanning, printing request form with the change to, sorry, my mouse is not working very well. I'm getting there. With the change to item, I'll come back down.
2C.
2C, to say if the request includes a question, not a record request, the record custodian is advised may respond if they know the answer and if the request is reasonable.
I will continue to second that.
Thank you. Well done. Any discussion by the board, and then I'll open it for public comment. Okay. Mr. Davidian, please unmute yourself and say your address, please. Mr. Davidian, would you like to be heard on this matter? I can't hear you.
Do you have a Bluetooth, any Bluetooth sort of device, Mr. Vinian? Sorry.
Mm.
Oh, man, I'm sorry, Mr. Davidian.
Is it possible for him to call in?
Mhm. Would you like to try calling in, Mr. Davidian, or don't know. Oh. Okay. I'm sorry about that. Technology. I don't have any other suggestions. Does anyone else?
So just please send us an email, but if you have any Bluetooths, just, I mean, it seems like the same problem you were having earlier, President McCaig, so.
Or if you would have an ability to call in by phone and not use the computer. I know some people just call in on the phone. And sounds old fashioned now that I say it, but if they could just do the old fashioned call in by phone. Oh, he said, give 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to be heard on this matter while we're waiting for Mr. Davidian? All right. Does anyone have any talents they'd like to share? I do human bagpipe.
Well, please do send us an email, Mr. Davidian. We appreciate your thoughts. I know we'll get one of those, so we'll appreciate your thoughts there, and we'll continue to work together on this issue that I know is so important to you. So apologize that you couldn't be a part of this conversation tonight, but please do send an email, and I'm sure this will all come together at some point in the future.
Yeah, well said, Trustee Ursink. All right, seeing no other hands raised, we could take a roll call at this time. Or a roll call vote.
Yes. Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Are you able to repeat the motion? If not, I'm gonna abstain.
No.
Okay, I'll abstain.
Okay. Trustee Warren.
Aye.
President McCaig.
Aye.
5 yeses, 0 no's, and 1 abstain.
Okay. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you for everyone, all your hard work on that. Moving on to finally, item 10, reports of village official. Village president is first. My first report is that Trustee Arndorfer has agreed to be the liaison, one of the members of the BI board with the school district. So I appreciate that. We are going to try to use the, I believe Director Ekman and President Shaw are the two representatives from the school district. we're going to try to use this group for the agenda setting, but then once a meeting is scheduled, invite all members of the boards to participate as kind of a reset since we have new leadership. We do have, I think, crossing guards is a time sensitive matter, so we are going to try to get something on the calendar for fall, knowing that it is a busy time for us with budget. So stay tuned for that. Plan Commission met earlier this week or last week and made a recommendation for modifications for the parking code that will come to us, I believe, September 8th. The ICC met in July, and I made a motion to have a discussion of equity, diversity, and inclusion on the September agenda to bring back the I guess some of the initiatives that the ICC discussed last year, but have not been followed through with at this time. And also, we just received an email today that Brian Mayor, I'm blanking on his name, Mayor Glendale has stepped down as chair, but so there'll be a new chair to the ICC. I think that's all that I have at this time, and I'll move on to trustees. I see hands up, Trustee Stokebrand, Trustee Ursink.
I just had one question. First of all, I wanted to say the Shorewood Artisan Market will be this Sunday in the Kingo Church parking lot from 10 to 2 at the corner of Wilson and Olive. And also, I was just curious, the liaison for the buy board. Did we have 2 before and we've only gone, are we just going to 1 now?
So actually it's 2 members, myself and Trustee Arndorfer, and then President Shaw and school board member Ekman. Trustee Ursink?
Yeah, so I just wanted to update everybody on a couple, projects that I work on in the village that are going really well right now. And, Shorewood Farmers Market is unreal right now. I mean, the amount of folks that are coming out to the market is fantastic to see. A lot of familiar faces, but probably even more so unfamiliar faces. And I think that's a really, really fantastic thing for our community, because people that I don't recognize are coming into Shorewood, and I think that is just such a fantastic thing to see. Last weekend, I got to represent the Shorewood Little League, and my wife was representing Powers Realty, and we were side by side in booths, and just the amount of people that came up to talk to her about wanting to live in Shorewood and not being from Shorewood and what it would take to live in Shorewood. I think that was just like fantastic. People are really excited about the community, and things like the farmers market are really, really helping that. Also, with that said, I know nobody really cares about our little league and our baseball program, but this past year we started a new kind of travel sort of tournament team with our littles, with our 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. And, I'm one of the coaches on the U9 team, and our team won our last 2 tournaments. And it was really cool to see Shorewood, on the jerseys representing our community, all over. Like, we were at the Wisconsin Dells, and we kicked some butt. We went 4-0, and our team was just incredible. And now people know that, like, wow, those kids from Shorewood are incredible, are really great baseball players. So, it's been a fantastic season, and I just, love the fact that we can represent the Shorewood in other communities like that. So that was fantastic. And also, just make sure you guys note on your calendars, the feast is going to be September 11th this year. My goal with that is really to make sure that if, anybody that works in the village and is a part of, the village would potentially get tickets to the dinner. We're trying to work with Steph Salvi on that note, but we're finalizing details for this big 125 person dinner out on the street. Fingers crossed, this new COVID does not destroy all of those plans. But, I think we've done such a good job with masking up here in Shorewood and just getting vaccinated that, fingers crossed, we're in a good position. So.
Thank you.
Come on, masking, is that the same location as last year, the feast?
Any other reports of village officials, trustees? All right, village manager.
Thank you. Had just 2 items to update the board on. One, I believe we received this morning a request from the board from Mask Up Shorewood. to pursue scheduling of that item or a request for a mask mandate within Shorewood under this new COVID guidance. At the time that they had submitted the request, we had to adhere to our requirements for the agenda and was unable to amend the agenda for purposes of this evening. But I had just sent to the board the protocol for the calling of special meetings, or also relayed that it could be further discussed under items for future consideration, should the board so choose. Along with that, just wanted to update. I know everybody in the village received this. Every one of our organization in the village received this email on Friday, but the village did update our COVID policy to request that people wear face coverings when indoors, when they're either in our public traffic areas or within 6 feet of another person, to be consistent with the CDC guidance. It is a request. We've had signs posted on our buildings. The library board has required that those older than 2 within the scope of the library be masked. They have a younger population that's a frequent visitor, and many of which that are not eligible at this time for vaccination. So in reviewing some of the guidance, they have made that decision as well. One other item to note, the Community and Business Relations Committee was reached out to today by Assistant Village Manager Burkhart to convene, or with a request to convene in the near future regarding the lifeguard request for proposals due to some time sensitivity. So know that that group has been reached out to, and that it's my understanding that they will be trying to coordinate on a time to meet. So if you see an agenda come through with that posting, know that it's due to this time sensitivity nature of a potential price increase associated with the quote provided. Last but not least, sorry, I forgot about this one. Going through the list, we, as you all recall, we approved a contract for the addition of some audiovisual improvements that were scheduled to take place this fall. So we find out that we're not the only ones. So there are other people who are also in the same demands for this equipment. And we don't believe that we're going to have all the infrastructure necessary to deploy on those until end of October, early November. So at this time in the virtual environment, that was the suggested route of action prior to the new information coming forth as well on COVID. So, you know, as we have done for the last year or more, we're going to stay limber. We're going to pivot when we need to. And so we'll be continuing in our virtual environment. And all committees are being requested to advise and adhere to that for purposes of communication. We want to make sure that when we do come back, that we have the direction of the board in mind and have an opportunity to have people join virtually as well as in person based upon levels of comfort. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. I think with that we can, items for future consideration. Trustee Warren, Trustee Stokebrand.
Yeah, I had a bunch of great discussions with Shorewood residents representing the gun safety consortium over the last couple of weeks, and it was a really interesting exploratory discussion. It's a group aimed at exactly what it says, making guns safer, and using technology and conducting experiments in order to do that. So this is also it's kind of a collaboration of a lot of municipalities who sign up and test out and agree to kind of test out this equipment, the police forces, in order to figure out whether it can be scaled for future use. So I believe the fee to join is $2,500 if memory serves. And I thought that would be a great thing to discuss during our budget process. So without actually discussing it, because we're just an item of future consideration, I just want to make a motion to direct staff to include a discussion of Shorewood joining the Gun Safety Consortium in the would be in September's budget process.
I'll second that.
Motion by trustee Warren, seconded by trustee Ursink. Any discussion? I would support that. All right, seeing none, we could take a vote. Would you like a roll call, Sarah?
Sure, that's fine. Trustee Bachhorst,
Yes.
trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Ursink,
All right,
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Stokebrand,
I'm going to abstain.
President McKeag.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 noes, 1 abstain. Motion passes.
Did you have another one, trustee Warren?
Oh, no, I should put my hand down.
Okay. Trustee Stokebrand?
Thank you. In light of a lot of emails that I've received and conversations that I've had with people in the village lately, I would move that the village board put on a future agenda consideration of a temporary moratorium on new commercial building permits until the village code is changed to reflect the goals outlined in the comprehensive 2040 plan with additional input from residents and business owners. I was part of the commission that approved the plan, and I think there was information that we got at the time about form-based code, and I think we need to tease out the details before this goes farther.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second? Okay, motion fails for lack of second. Thank you. I look forward to form-based code discussions. Trustee Ursink?
just to follow up on the village manager's report with the mask up Shorewood, is that something that we need to make a motion for a special meeting right now? How do you want to approach that? Because I think it's a worthy conversation to have on the village board, and I'm not quite sure we can wait another month for that. So what's the best way to approach this?
There's two options that the board has. Two members of the board can always request a meeting of the board when filed in writing with the clerk. Another option would be to have that discussion right now with your counterparts to see if there's a desire to meet at a future date in order to take up that item.
Okay. I know August is a very busy month for everybody, but would there be any, with this board, would there be any second to that, the conversation I would say the conversation should be to instate mask wearing indoors.
Hey, point of order. I mean, I'm just trying to be efficient. Like, I think I would certainly support calling a meeting to discuss this, but even if we have the discussion here, don't we need to also submit it in writing? I mean, I don't think we can call a special meeting right now. I think we need to submit it in writing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm certainly in support of it. I'm happy to sign
Correct.
it. So
Correct. Nope.
Okay. So it sounds like we have two trustees that will call a meeting, and then that could be, that could happen in writing, and then either Clerk Bruckman or Manager Ewald could connect around scheduling.
Great. And to follow that up, would there be a opportunity then to, if we have the special meeting with the masking, can we also do the lifeguards in that as well? Is that the idea, or can you explain to me how that works, Rebecca, with the lifeguard situation?
For efficiency purposes, I think that would make the most sense.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Well, can I make a motion? Is it a motion? What do you want me to make here? I don't, a motion to hold a special meeting at the discretion of the village manager and scheduling for mask up shore or masking in the indoor community, masking in indoor businesses. And I'm just going off the top of my head here, guys. It's late. I apologize. Masking indoor within our business community, as well as our government buildings, and also a special meeting in relation to the lifeguard fees.
Can we do that? Like, I'll second that, but can we do it?
Yeah,
Or do we actually-
Yeah, I mean, I think that you've got the ordinance references to trustees calling a meeting. So if you're just directing staff to, you're essentially making the motion here. And if you get a second and then everybody votes on it, you've got at least two. And then you're just essentially directing staff to coordinate a date and time to be determined, it sounds like.
I'll second it. Then.
Is that my understanding? Is that a date and time to be determined?
Yep, that's where I was going with it. So that would be my,
Got it.
okay.
For the board clarification, I just want to let you know that in our facilities, we are requesting that people wear masks for our employees when we're in a public area and within 6 feet of another person. The direction at this time is to be masked. And then with the library, they're requiring it for 2 and older than 2. So just to make that clarification, so that you know how we proceeded internally.
yeah, and I'd love to get a little bit more dialogue on with the bars and restaurants, and I think, I don't think I'd be as, we need more, I think we need more information all around, and we need to talk to some other community players as well. So, but I do think, based on news and information coming out, that it's a worthy conversation for our board to have, regardless of what everybody wants to do with it, sooner than our September 8th meeting, because we got school going back to September 1st. So it'd be nice to have this conversation before we go back to school.
Given the time, I would ask if we could take a vote on this.
We'll do a roll call. Trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Bachhorst,
Yes.
President McKeag.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Great. We have one item left on the adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We are adjourned at 10:34. Thank you, everyone.
It was good seeing everybody.
Yeah, good to see you too.
See you
Bye-bye.
soon.